Hello, John Talley here with Partzilla.com. Welcome to our Friday edition. We're actually having on Thursday. Reason being, I'm going out of town tomorrow to go play at a racetrack, so we decided to go ahead and do this a day early. So what we're going to do is wait for a couple of questions to come in, and then we'll start going through them. After that, I'm going to go load up so I can be wheels up first thing in the morning. TAC is sending in a question. John, we need to do a TRX 250R build. I think we do. We just need to find a TRX 250R to build. Know of any nearby? Bad audio, huh? Let's see. How about that, guys? Robert, is that any better on the audio? I'm running it solo today, so it's a little bit janky. So hopefully we'll get the audio thing. All right, echo. Is that echo quit now, everybody? Give me some input here if there's anything. Okay, we're good to go now. Yes, I'd love to do an ATC 250R. So I just need to find one. And then Rob's saying he wants to see more on the VTX 1800s. One of my favorite machines. I don't see why we can't bring one of those and get some projects done on it more than we did on that first one we did. Good gosh, was that 4 or 5 years ago now? All right, thanks for the feedback, no pun intended. So I think we've got it straightened out now. All right, Greg, you're asking one actually for the shipping department, but I'll go ahead and read it off for you. Greg is asking, why are your estimates so far off for part arrival? A month when I ordered in December, stuff moves to March now, May, crazy. Yeah, if we haven't shipped it to you, that means that we can't get it, and I doubt anybody else can either. But what we can do is have one of our customer representatives to reach out to you, Greg, and find out if I'm right, and then how long it really is going to take to get whatever product you're looking for, because we're not trying to hide it from you, I promise. If we can get it, we want to ship it to you just as quick as we can. I mean, that's what we do. So guys, if you would reach out to Mr. Weston and see if we can get him helped. All right, there were a few questions that I didn't get to last week, so we're going to flip over there real quick and get a couple of those answered. Justin is asking me, I have a 300EX from 2005 and the bike turns over, but I'm still not getting any spark. I replaced the CDI. I checked the fuse, it was good, and all the lights turn on. What could be causing this? Well, there's a couple of different things. One of them being your neutral switch, one of them being your gear position sensor, and I think we go through a similar diagnostic on a 400EX, which they should be fairly similar as far as their schematic. So if you would reference that video and see if we can get you pointed in the right direction. Case is asking me, with the battery tender trickle charger, does it know when not to charge the battery? Because I plug in these battery tenders and leave them on for months. Is that bad? No, that is what they are designed to do. They sit there and monitor the battery, and when it falls to a certain threshold, it brings it back up. So no, you're doing your battery a favor by leaving that connected. And that's what it's supposed to be doing. Dan Witz also asked me, any idea why while bleeding front brakes, it will be filling the reservoir and overflowing? Must be a Polaris, a 2005 Polaris Scrambler. Yes, the reason being is your hand lever, I think it's the front left, does your brakes in the front as well as your brake caliper in the back. Then you also have one for your foot that does the back. Now those two joints, or those two lines come together, and one is trying to backfill the other. So chances are you're going to need to, of all things, you're going to have to go into that rear caliper and possibly rebuild it, because those two are intermixing somehow or another. Maybe a check valve. I've never actually opened one up, but I know that's the one point on the machine where your front brake master and your rear master, they come together. So it's probably in there somewhere. Okay, and this questions are starting to come in. Zayed is asked, well, here we go. Jason actually beat you to that. Hey John, what is a good winch to install on the front of a Honda Foreman? There's so many different ones out there. The best one is going to be a Warren. That's my go-to. They've been in the business the longest. There are other brands that may be a little bit cheaper, but I've always had really good luck with the Warren. And if you go to their site or our site, it'll actually direct you to which one you'll need for your machine and which kit you would need to get it installed. Because just ordering the winch without the kit, that's going to make for a long day. TAC also asked me VP 110 or Sunoco 110. I've only run Sunoco a couple of times, but what they're actually doing is meeting a standard. VP fuels, I've always had good luck with them. That's one I run in some of my toys. Certainly not the 110. I don't have anything quite that high compression, but certainly their 98 stuff has always served me well. As long as they meet the requirements or the specs, whether it's one company or other, I don't think you can go wrong. It would probably come down to pricing for me, just a personal choice. Zayed is asking me, my TRX-9E is a pull start and it backfired once when trying to start it, and I took it to the dealer and they told me it's from not pulling the start hardly. Is it correct? It's backfiring because you didn't pull through hard enough? I kind of doubt that. I would be suspect of your intake valve being a little bit too tight and allowing it to ignite back through your intake, causing it to backfire. So I'd check your valve clearances first. And yeah, I don't think the rate at which you're pulling the pull start should have that much of effect. All right, Josh is asking me, I bolted a new carb on a Kodiak 400 2005 4x4 and the engine will idle when you give it gas. It spits and sputters. That leads me to believe that your float level is not correct, and it's a brand new carb. Maybe they were a little off when they set the float level, so you need to go through the procedure to see where that level's at. Depending on that carb, I don't know it firsthand. You can go to the bleed valve on the bottom of the float bowl and use the clear line and then bring it up the side of the machine, open your fuel and see where that line is, and that's going to tell you where it is on the float bowl. Now on most carbureted units, it should be right at where the bowl connects to the base of the carburetor, or maybe a little bit below it, because if you don't have that main jet immersed in fuel, it can't pull it up. So my bet is the float bowl level is too low, and they must have missed that at the factory when they built it, whichever model it is. Chaka's, we need some more Polaris Trailblazer videos. I do need to get another Polaris in here. But I've got one back here that we've got to get finished, and then there's that Wax Z1000R that's beckoning me to get it put back together because it's spread all over the studio and outside. I got to get that finished. I guess I need to get busy. All right, Richard was saying, hey, my brother was here 3 sessions ago and asked about a rectifier on my 01 Rancher ES. The problem was a pulled wire off the 30 amp main. Thanks for your help. Well, you're very welcome. Hopefully we directed you quickly to where you were able to determine what that problem was. Oh, come on, quit jumping around. Luke is asking me, hi, my clutch gets hot on my CRF 450X. Is there a way I can cool it down? Well, your clutch on the 450, kind of like this one behind me, it has a separate oil, or it's supposed to be separate from the front, and it depends on what weight oil that you're running in the back, and I believe that they say to run a 90 weight. You may want to consider going to a full synthetic. Maybe that's going to help, dissipate the heat a little bit better. So my guess is that the oil is maybe a little too thick, and you need to thin it out just a tick and see if that helps it. All right. Syed came back and says, they mean by not pulling hard, it is flooded. I guess I could see that if you're not getting it to spin over fast enough as far as bringing the piston up to combust it correctly. I mean, it can't just travel up at a slow speed. So maybe not pulling it hard enough did cause it to flood if you were giving it gas as you were doing it. I would say take your finger off the throttle and just let the choke do its job. And you should, if the motorcycle set or the four-wheeler set up correctly, you should be able to just turn on the choke or pull the choke, turn it on and pull, and then it should start and idle on its own. You shouldn't have to goose it along with the throttle at startup. All right, Lewis has asked me, do you recommend a shift support for a 2020 Grom? I'm not sure what you're talking about with a shift support. If you're talking about a different shifter or a different, what do they call that, a peg set? Yes, especially if you're a big guy like me. And we actually did that on our Grom that we gave away. Good gosh, has it already been 2 years ago? So look at the Grom videos that we have and see if that's what you're talking about with the different shifter to that, the shifter and rear peg set that we put on it. All right, Richard has also asked me, why does my 2001 Rancher 350 ES backfire when warm since changing my choke plunger? That makes me wonder if the plunger is actually pushed all the way in, if it's still sending in fuel when it's not, or choking it back. So I would check to make sure that the plunger was actually screwed all the way in, because if you don't go all the way in, it's not going to be able to close up all the way when you're done using it. It's still going to try to choke the machine. All right, Rob is asking me, Nicosil cylinders, to hone or not? Still have faint cross hatching in them, no gouging damage, etc. Okay, just a re-ring. What I would advise with the Nicosil, because it is such a very thin coating, and if you go in there with an aggressive grit hone, it's just going to wipe it off, and that's the last thing you want. What you're going to want to do is, what I would prefer to do and what I usually use is just what they call a nylon hone or nylon brush. That is basically just to clean up what's in there, just to get any debris, anything that's built up inside of those cross hatches flushed out. So I would say invest in one of those, re-ring it, and go back together. When am I going to do a high compression piston set on that WAV Z450R? Well, I don't know. The owner of that particular machine, I'm not sure he could handle a high compression piston in there. So when his riding ability gets a little bit better, maybe we'll make it a little bit faster. So we'll just have to wait that one out. Daniel's asking me, how can I lower a KX450F? I'm 5'7" and already shaved about 2 inches off the seat. Well, you're already heading in the right direction. I typically don't like to mess with the geometry of the factory settings, but of course you drop your front forks by just bringing them up in the clamps, and then on the rear you may have to go with a different length configuration on the geometry for the shock linkage to see if that would bring it down for you. I don't know of anyone off the top of my head, but if my guys down in Florida would research that real quick, hopefully before we finish up here in a few minutes to see if we've got a recommendation we can point you to. All right, Simon's asked me, hi, still not to ship to Switzerland. I don't know yet, guys, but the Partzilla team, are we shipping to Switzerland yet? And believe me, when they release us, if they have not, we'll get it out there as quick as we can. Reborn has asked me, I have a 1998 300EX and it won't start after sitting for a few months. What should be my first thing to check? I say this quite often, but I'm telling you, that especially on these older machines, when they've got a fair amount of wear on the intake valves, that closes up your clearance, and then they're not actually closing all the way, especially when they're completely cold. So check your especially your intake valve clearance and make sure it's not too tight. I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, that's what it's going to be. Tack has asked me, what's your favorite machine that you have? Well, that's a loaded question. If we're talking about the power sports, probably my most favorite one I've played with for the last couple of years is the Polaris Razor 900S. Most of the trails around here are really tight, and that thing's a woods weapon. I like going fast through the woods. Wide open spaces, nah, that's no fun. I got to have a little bit of danger of trees and whatnot going past me. at high velocity. As far as the street machine, always been partial to the Honda VTX 1300 or the 1800, either one. On the sports side, I really don't ride sports that often. Man, I'm older, I'm more seasoned, so I like the kind of relaxed back feel of a cruiser. All right, Chris is asking me, got a 2000 Honda Recon that will not shift into fourth. Replace the shift motor and the shift angle. It will sometimes shift right when you let off the gas. My next option is the plastic gear instead of the ES motor. What are your thoughts? It sounds to me like you've probably got a bent shift fork, because if you're going through 1, 2, and 3 without a problem, 4 is not wanting to line up. So it may be a combination of the shift fork and or the drum that it's popping back and forth. That's what that motor's turning. It's basically a manual shift with a motor on the front of it that's doing the shifting for you. That's what it amounts to. So I'm leaning toward either shift drum worn out, shift fork worn out or bent, or potentially your gear where it engages, those dogs are worn and they're not going all the way in. Daniel's asking me, is it dangerous to run no air filter? Absolutely, unless you're on a boat. You do not want to do that. I mean, if you're at a drag strip and it's going to be a limited hour engine anyway, okay, go ahead and do it. But it's at your peril. But for daily use, I wouldn't. I don't care what machine it is. I wouldn't consider doing it. Operating it without an air filter. Apparently, what? Well, you heard me. We'll keep working out. Cha-Cha has asked me, best tool recommendations looking for a 180 plus piece kit under $200. There are a couple of entry-level ones. They've got one, it's not DeWalt, Cobalt has one. It actually folds out. It's a decent kit, and the build quality is okay. Only problem is with those, your ratchets usually are kind of clunky. They don't have that many teeth in them. What I typically do and what I do with the box behind me, I'll go with the Cobalt and I'll go with the Craftsman as far as the sockets and the extensions and the screwdrivers. But when it comes to the ratchets, that's when I step it up a notch and either go with Snap-on or Blue Point. So I kind of build a hybrid kit, so to speak. But check into the Cobalt kit. Is probably like this, and it actually unfolds, and that's the one that we travel with, and that's the one that goes to the track with us. It'll get the job done. I just wouldn't want to use it all the time because it's just a little bit clunky. Corey, just want to say thank you for your videos. You've helped me multiple times. Well, you're very welcome. That is why we are here. Jason has asked me, John, I just had my Honda carb cleaned and rebuilt by our local Honda dealer and reinstalled on my Foreman, okay? They adjusted it to run right, but after it runs for a bit, it stalls itself. How do I fix this? Well, I would wonder what your idle RPM is set at, and it almost sounds like your idle air fuel may need to come out another half a turn, because what it's doing is it's having trouble transitioning from idle to the first stage of the carburetor. So it's kind of stumbling there and falling off. And if you give it a little bit more fuel on that idle air fuel screw, just a quarter or a half turn at the most, that should enrich it enough to where it'll transition over to the other jets. You are welcome, Corey. Oh, come here. Reborn has asked me, would you recommend staying with the stock suspension on my 2014 TRX 450 ER, or is there any different aftermarket that would benefit me mainly for trail riding? Honestly, for using it for trail riding, what I would suggest is lightening up on your rebound and your preload and actually going with a softer spring. My son rides a YFZ 450R, and it was beating him to death, and we spend most of our time at the trail riding basically, but at speed. And by changing out the springs to a softer rate, it made it a much more fun experience. So you may want to look at backing off on the spring rates and changing them out to something that's not quite so aggressive. All right, Bam has asked me, can you do a video on how to diagnose a bad stator on a 2006 Kawasaki Brute Force 750i and how to change one? I don't think we've done one on the Brute Force 750 yet, but a stator, the diagnosing process is pretty much the same. And we've done several videos on a couple of different units that shows you how to walk through that. So guys, if y'all would point Bama to a stator testing video, and so he can take a look at that. We're almost out of time. We'll answer a couple more. Music Man, a 1998 Honda GL 1500 purchased used and getting ready to ride with my wife. Total of 455 pounds. We are bottoming out over larger bumps, and that is with the air shock at 60 PSI. Maybe PS 412s. I assume you're talking about a spring rate, because that's where I was going to point you to. Is yes, you're putting plenty of pressure in the shot, but you may need to up the spring rate, so that will give you more initial, dampening's not the right word, but stiction to keep the suspension up instead of bottoming out so easily. Plus at 1998, those springs are probably about had it, or that spring is probably about had it back there. All right, we pointed Bama to testing a stator, good grief, I am tired this week. Carter's asked me, on a Honda Rancher 350, does the clutch adjuster actually adjust the clutches like older Hondas? Someone told me that it just adjusts the stiffness of the shifting. That is actually, those things are so tricky to adjust, because you break loose that locking nut, and then you've got a center screw. And that, not so much as your stiffness, but that's your engagement window where it's actually going to do the shifting. So it's not the stiffness, that just pretty much shortens the distance as to which it engages into the clutching system. Tack, you are welcome. Well, all right, guys, there goes 30 minutes, although I did start a little bit late. That's what you get when I have to run things all on my own. Well, listen, we just want to say thank you for swinging by and spending a little bit of time with us, and especially if you purchased anything from Partzilla, thank you very much. We just want to say thanks for spending some time with us, and God willing, we will be back next Friday, and everybody have a great weekend, a great week, and we will see you then. God bless.